Good evening and welcome in to the StrikeZone podcast. I am Joe Hunk. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Hunk. Now also make sure that you always follow 1045 The Zone, no matter where you are listening at. Doesn't matter if you're on Spotify, if you're on Apple Podcast, or if you are listening and watching the videos on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, or any other place that you may be consuming this video tonight. Like always, this is a discussion that you can hop into at any point in time. We have got the chat open as we go along now. Obviously going to be talking to you a lot about what has been going on Major League Baseball wise. We also kind of forget, and we'll probably remember like tomorrow, but the Olympics are starting and baseball's actually involved this year. So it is going to be kind of fun to see if you don't know the process that is involved when it comes to selecting Olympic baseball players. It's basically as long as you're not playing Major League Baseball, you're good. So that is going to be something that we're going to be talking about because the U.S. team starts pool play here in the next couple of days. Look, the Olympics has already started. The women's softball team's already got, I believe, 2 wins, and I believe both of those have been shutouts. So even though the opening ceremony is not happening until tomorrow, you do have Olympic baseball going on. Now, we strategically held off from starting the Strike Zone podcast until the Braves game wrapped up because bullpen. And we don't ever really know what is going to be happening with the Braves bullpen. Now tonight, Braves end up getting themselves a good win. Now the Mets did not play tonight, so they are now 4 games back. They only gain a half game. The Mets are getting ready to play the Blue Jays in a 3-game series starting tomorrow in New York. But as you can tell, based on the rundown that we have up here directly beside me, right there, that the trade deadline is 8 days away. And there are a lot of questions about what on earth is about to happen, because if you do not know, and it's changed over the course of the last 365 because of COVID and Major League Baseball kind of experimenting with some things, there used to be 2 different trade deadlines. You had the trade deadline that came up on June 30th, and that was the one that everybody kind of paid attention to the most. The next one that is normally popping up is going to be the waiver wire trade deadline. Now, the way that one used to work is on June or July 31st or August 1st, all of these teams would put these players on the trade waivers. And what would happen is, depending on what teams selected them, they then could turn around and try to see if they could strike a deal with that team. And so it was a very unique and weird process with how it goes. In fact, probably the most notable trade deadline when it comes to the waiver wire was Justin Verlander in 2017 when he was traded to the Houston Astros from the Detroit Tigers. And that is probably the one that you would think of the most, because when I say that came down to the last second, if you ever are in a gym, if you work out, do some CrossFit or Iron Tribe or anything like that, you always have that clock up there that's always literally counting down, and it has a clock right down to the second. Radio, we have it as well so that we know when to go a break. But like that deal for Justin Verlander came down to like 11:59:59, and that's not an exaggeration either. There's a lot of stories about what the Houston Astros did and how close that deal was to not being done because they couldn't get it done in time. But this year, there's only one trade deadline. And unlike other sports, I think Major League Baseball has the biggest trade deadline in sports. And there's a pretty good reason for it. And a lot of it has to do with, in other sports, when you are talking about baseball, or if you are talking about basketball or football especially, because you rarely, and I mean rarely, hear about trades happening in the NFL during the football season, is more specifically on offense, because of how difficult it is to bring a player into the team and try to get them up to speed on your playbook in time to make a difference on the football field. Now, some trades do take place, but when you're talking about an NFL football team whose playbook is like this thick, and if you can't see this because you're listening on our podcast version, I'm holding my fingers like 2 and 3 inches apart saying, look, it's this thick is how thick the playbook is. And you don't expect any wide receiver, running back, or anything like that being able to hop in and be able to make a difference on that. And so basketball, it's a little bit more about team chemistry. Some trades do get made, but that's also a sport where they don't happen as much. Same kind of goes for hockey. But in Major League Baseball, look, the trade deadline is a humongous deal because in baseball, it doesn't matter if you're playing for the Mariners, if you're playing for the Mets, if you're playing for the Cubs or White Sox, or if you're playing for the Rangers. Basically, your job is whenever you get to the plate is to hit the baseball. And so, there's going to be some communication things when you're talking about your shortstops, your second baseman, but for the most part, you can figure all of that stuff out. And making the right trade can take your team from being a potential borderline playoff team to being a borderline World Series / World Series champion team. And it's that big of a deal. There's been some teams that have done it. The Chicago Cubs are going to be one of your best instances. A couple of years ago, back in 2016, obviously we just mentioned Verlander, but back in 2016, you had that deal that the Cubs made with the Yankees for Aroldis Chapman, and that was the biggest missing piece on that Cubs team because we all knew, if we remember, they were basically just a closer away from being able to win the World Series, and that's exactly what they got, and that's exactly what they did. So that's why this trade deadline is so important. Now, for the most part, which is extremely strange, is you haven't had many trades that have happened so far with about 8 days ago. And the biggest one literally happened tonight. In fact, it happened probably just a couple of hours ago. And that was the Tampa Bay Rays actually trading for a humongous, and I cannot emphasize this enough, a humongous bat in Nelson Cruz, because this man is one of the deadliest DHs in Major League Baseball. He arguably could be the most dangerous DH in Major League Baseball. And the fact that the Rays not only traded, now that's one thing to trade, okay? You're talking about the Tampa Bay Rays, who rarely, and I mean rarely, actually trade away minor league talent for a major league player unless they just absolutely have to. Now, you can go back in the Rays organization. You can look at the Chris Archer trade. That's actually the one that brought Tyler Glasnow to the Rays, and he's like their ace right now. And so those are some of the things that are going on. The Tampa Bay Rays, it's not just that they made a trade and that it was for a major league player. It's the fact of who they traded to Minnesota. Joe Ryan, who is a AAA pitcher at Durham. Yes, the Durham Bulls. They are the AAA affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays. And another pitcher by the name of Drew Strotman, who is also a AAA pitcher. So you're talking about two guys that are literally an injury or a bad outing away from being in the major leagues and potentially helping this Tampa Bay Rays team that, in all seriousness, is one of the best teams in Major League Baseball. And I say that because when you're looking at what they're doing with Boston, and basically Tampa and Boston are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Whichever team does not win the division is going to be the number one wild card team. And you do not want that to happen. And the American League, you don't really know how the playoff picture is going to kind of happen. Like, we kind of know in the National League that most likely it's going to be two NL West teams as your wild card team, and most likely the NL West is also going to be the number one seed in the MLB playoffs. So whoever wins that wild card game is going to be basically playing somebody in their division. In the American League, all 3 division leaders right now have 58 wins. So if you're Tampa, you could either be hosting the Red Sox, hosting the Oakland A's, or traveling to Houston or traveling to Chicago, whichever it is. So it's not as kind of a foregone conclusion the way that it has been in the past for a lot of teams. Now, you can get those comments in. Again, I had the Braves game going on directly behind me right now. It just wrapped up. And the main reason I was kind of holding off is we don't ever know what's going to happen with this Braves team, and especially this Braves bullpen. Now, let me ask you, because it's weird. Last week when we talked, we were 15 days away from the trade deadline. Ronald Acuna Jr. had just gotten injured. And basically, we were coming up with all of these different scenarios of why teams should or should not be trading, what is going on. And that is why we were like, okay, what is happening? Like, why and what should the Atlanta Braves be doing? Well, last week, you can go back into our podcast and you can listen to it. We started putting out some trade options that the Braves could be making. And yes, we even talked about the potential of trading Freddie Freeman. The problem is that we still don't know. Like, you're 8 days away. You lost one and won one against San Diego. You have another game that's going to be a continuation. I'll explain what that is in a second. And now you've went into Philadelphia, and tonight you got yourself a grand slam. You won like 7-2. Your bullpen actually pitched very well. And Charlie Morton, who again is this 1-year guy that the Braves brought in, pitched extremely well. And the biggest problem is again, Braves are 1 game away from 500. If you're watching right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're 1 game from 500. They're now 4 games back of the New York Mets, who are currently in first place. And you're 8 days away from the trade deadline. The Braves at this point in time are like in baseball purgatory. It's the second time I've used purgatory today. But they're like in baseball purgatory because we don't know if they should be buyers or sellers. We don't know. And look, as the fan base is concerned, if you're a fan of the Atlanta Braves and you're watching tonight on the StrikeZone podcast, first off, I appreciate you. I welcome you in. We're going to get to some of the comments as they get flowing in throughout the rest of the evening. But you now have this scenario where the Braves could sweep the Phillies, which it'd be a 4-game sweep, which would be extremely impressive, especially in Citizen Bank. And you have that 4-game series. You have the Mets playing the Blue Jays right now, which the Blue Jays could still potentially make a run for the wild card. And that is why you don't know which way to go, because you definitely need bullpen help. I don't care about what the stupid catcher was, this backup catcher that the Braves picked up that was a 2-time All-Star like 5 years ago, and he's batting like .212, and the Braves are literally getting him. By the way, if you have MILB.TV and you are a Braves fan, you may want to go down and go back to tonight's game for Gwinnett and watch how Contreras is doing. Dude has mashed like 5 home runs in 11 games since being back in Gwinnett. He is on fire, okay? Christian Pache's been playing better. And I will say, Touki Toussaint, I talked about him last week about how well he had not been doing in the minor leagues and pitched very well for Atlanta in his season debut. He pitched very well. So you now have to figure this out, because honestly, and I think that was another reason why I was trying to wait until this Braves game was over with, we don't know. Like, that Braves bullpen could have blown that lead. They've done it before. And it's not shocking at all. And so, look, you trade for Jock Peterson. And yes, he has hit 2 home runs. Both of them have been off of lefties. I think he's got like 1 hit off of a righty since he's become an Atlanta Brave. And that's not counting tonight. But all of that, and yes, against lefties, Jock Peterson should be in right field. He's a very good right fielder, and especially when he is going up against lefties. but you need pitching, is specifically in the bullpen. I actually am not worried about the starting pitching for the Braves. Somehow, some way, this Atlanta Braves team is arguably still a playoff team. They're not a great playoff team, but they're potential at being a playoff team, especially with how bad the NL East is. So let's get some comments as they're starting to roll in. You can follow us on 104.5 The Zone on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube. Facebook Live is where we are as well. Go give us a like. Always share, always retweet. We always want to build this community as we continue to talk about baseball on the Strike Zone podcast. If you do not get to see all of the podcasts tonight, you can go back and watch it in our archives just by going to the video section on no matter what social media feed you're on, or you can follow us on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Spotify and you can listen to it there, and also kind of give us a review. I really would like some 5-star reviews. I'm not afraid of begging. Anybody that knows me is basically I'll do whatever I need to for views and for likes and comments. I just am. All right, Casey hops in. He says, we need Glasnow back. With Cruz added, I'm giddy as heck. Look, the Tampa Bay Rays, and I bring the Tampa Bay Rays up because for a few reasons. Okay. And Casey, I don't know where you live or where you're watching from, but I 100% believe deep in my soul, 5 years from right now, the Tampa Bay Rays will be the Nashville Stars, the Nashville Sounds, the Nashville something and others, okay? I truly believe the Tampa Bay Rays will be moving to Nashville. So I always kind of keep an eye on Tampa Bay because that team, with Kevin Cash as its manager, with what Joe Madden did beforehand, bringing them back, man, that is a very good baseball team. Like, it is extremely good. And yes, Glasnow is injured. And honestly, for all my friends in Montgomery that are watching tonight, Casey, Yorkie, I know you're in there as well. All my Biscuits friends, as if you don't know, I used to work for the Montgomery Biscuits, and I want Glasnow to do a rehab start for the Biscuits. Specifically in, around the beginning of September or so when the Biscuits are trying to make the playoffs. That's kind of what I would really want for. Now, and you also have Smokey hopping in that is saying Freddie was the MVP for a 60-game season. Just saying, look, I don't care. That man was playing at MVP level a couple of years ago when he got injured for a good portion of the season. And honestly, if you go back and you look at how Freddie was playing before he got injured a couple of years ago, and you compare that to what Ronald Acuna Jr. was doing this year, very similar seasons. The power that Freddie Freeman was showing from the left side of the plate, he was having an MVP season, then he got hurt. He was gone for multiple months and then came back. You had Ronald Acuna Jr. kind of on that same path as well until he got injured. And that's kind of one of these comparisons that make Braves fans get excited to come back, or for Acuna to come back, because then you can see how much he is going to make with this team. That's the sad thing about it, is this is still a playoff team right now without Acuna. How? I have no idea. It's just the way that Snitker is coaching these players up, and specifically these young players. Now, and Smokey brings up the pitcher from the Chicago Cubs. I actually struggle with his name, and anybody that knows me would probably just get a good laugh at me trying to say his name. But yes, the Cubs pitcher, which is not Craig Kimbrell, he is a very good option. And I honestly think that as much as I'm looking right now at the Chicago Cubs team, which at the moment they're 9 games out, there's only 8 days remaining. There's no way that this team is going to get into any sort of position to contend before the trade deadline. And most likely the Cubs are going to be traders. Now, the way that this works is you will have a general manager that is going to send out a text or something along those lines to kind of a variety of other general managers and going to say, hey man, just letting you know, we're willing to trade this guy. Let me know what you're willing to offer. Now, that is probably going to start tomorrow. If not, it already has started. And there's a reason why you hear about these teams waiting until the final minute to make these trades. It's not because they waited and they woke up and they went, oh crap, it's July 30th. Okay, guys, we need to get a plan together. That's not really how this works. They start kind of greasing the wheel, as I should say, and they start negotiating for about a week, and they start collecting, man. They start collecting their best trade offers, and they're like, hey, that's the best one. Let's revisit that one. That's the second best one. If we can't get number one, let's get number two. And they wait all the way until the trade deadline to see which ones are still available, which ones is the best one, which ones has offered the most, and that's the way that this works. So that's why these general managers are already starting to get this going. Majority of the time, no, these trades are not going to happen until you get to July 30th, July 29th, or something along those lines. So some of these teams have been sending out this text message. Let's just use the Cubs for an example. Hey, if we're not within 5 by July 30th, these guys are available. Send me your offers. And he's going to send it out. It's kind of like whenever you're single and you are trying to see which girl is still up. Hey, you up? She didn't read it. Okay, let me send it to the next one. Hey, you up? She didn't reply. Let me send it to the next one. Oh, she's reading it. There we go. That's kind of the way that this works. It's a horrible example for any girl that's watching. I'm sorry, but that does happen. And so with the trade deadline, and if you are a Rays fan, dude, you should be so giddy. And I mean so giddy. Okay? Not only should you be giddy if you're a Rays fan, but you should also be giddy if you're playing and you want to play as the Tampa Bay Rays on MLB The Show, because Nelson Cruz is dynamite. And I mean solid. Okay? The man, and look, I know that if you're ever talking about a player and you're talking about batting average and all this other thing, Nelson Cruz, even though he can mash like 40, 45 home runs, he's also still a 300 hitter. Right now, this man is batting 294. Last season, he finished with 303. Yes, I know it was only 60 games. The season before that, he finished with 311. The guy hits for average. But also, he can make a ball go 475 feet in Minnesota. I promise you, he is going to hit a home run off of the wall at the back of Tropicana at some point in time at the end of this season, because that is what this man does. He goes up, and pitchers either have to pitch to him, which is so much fun to watch, or they pitch around him and he just takes his base and the guy behind him has a runner on. It is so much fun. And yes, Matt just said Nelson Cruz has been awesome for a while. Nelson Cruz has been awesome. And what's crazy is can you name all the teams that Nelson Cruz has played for? I'm going to tell you right now off the top of my head, I believe it is 6. And I'm actually looking this up as I'm talking to you so that I don't get this wrong. But Nelson Cruz, through his career, has played for Milwaukee, long time with Texas. Just ask any Rangers fans about him playing right field during the 2011 World Series. Baltimore, Seattle, and Minnesota. In Texas, his highest home run output was 29 home runs. In Baltimore, which he only played one season in Baltimore, he hit 40 home runs. In Seattle, he had 44 and 43 home runs. In Minnesota in 2019, which was obviously the last full season, he had 41 home runs. And this year, he's already got 19 home runs. He was an all-star, and I was really sad he did not take place in the home run derby. Like, as much as we love Shohei Ohtani, Nelson Cruz in the home run derby, that man can mash. and it is beautiful. Look, I'm telling you, and I'm not even talking about the second half card, or if you're talking about a rookie card, or if you're talking about the Silver Slugger card and all that sort of stuff. On MLB The Show, just go get Nelson Cruz that has the Tampa Bay Rays logo on it, which they updated the roster today, so I don't know if it's actually got him on Tampa just yet, but go get that card. It's extremely cheap, and you can mash because it's got like a 98, 102 power on MLB The Show, and you hit that on the right side. I promise you, people hate pitching to him. Just wait it out, okay? Yes, this is also talking video games, but it's a baseball video game, so that's exactly what matters. Casey says the second half in the AL East is going to be fire. I really think that is going to be between the Rays and the Red Sox. The Yankees, that team is really sad. And I don't mean sad because they're not good. It's, to me, just looking from the outside, and I'm not talking about anything that I've read or anything that I've seen, there's got to be some sort of chemistry issue in that locker room. I mean, there has got to be. There are way too many good players on that team, starting rotation, in the field, in the bullpen. There are way too many good players on that team for that team to be playing as bad as they are. That should not be happening. Now, Yankees are not known for good starting pitching, and a lot of people is pointing at the fact that Cole cannot use Spider Tech anymore, and that's affecting him and all that. Look, honestly, outside of the one pitcher in Seattle, we really haven't heard anybody getting hit with sticky substance, suspensions, or getting in trouble or anything like that. In fact, and that's the reason why, like tonight, if you were watching, when one of the Braves pitchers got pulled as he was walking off the field, the umpire checked his stuff. So I don't know if Major League Baseball kind of said, hey, look, man, don't stop the game. Just do not stop the game. All right, Brad said, who is the dog? What dog? There's no dog in the picture. What are you talking about, Brad? All right, so we have another comment coming in on Twitch. Remember, you can watch us Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. If I've missed one, I mean, we're on a ton of social media feeds. Make sure that you follow us on 104.5 The Zone. Make sure that you follow me at Joe Hunk. Do we think Jacques is getting traded or staying with the Braves? If traded, what can they get for him? Look, this is going to be something that's going to come down to July 30th. And with Jacques Peterson, I want to make sure that I say this properly, because his splits since being with the Braves is going to be the most important thing here, because that's what the Braves are banking on. Since he's been with the Braves, he's batting almost 300. He's already got at least one home run. Yes, he's got one home run. He's already got 4 RBIs, but he's batting 300 right now for the Braves. He is a better player against left-handed pitching. And I think that that's kind of been something that he's really gotten into some good situations so far since being a Brave, that he's faced a lot of left-handed batters. The biggest question with this, and this is what we were talking about earlier, if you're just now hopping in, is that the Braves right now are kind of in this trade deadline purgatory. They're 4 games back. The NL East is god awful. In all reality, and I mean this wholeheartedly. And if you're a Braves fan, I'm gonna piss you off, but the Braves should not be in any sort of playoff hunt right now. They just shouldn't. With this team, they should not be in a playoff hunt. If they were in any other division in Major League Baseball except for the NL East, this team would be already trying to trade some of their players away. What I believe is happening is the magic number for the Braves is going to be 5. And I mean by that is 5 games back. If they're in front of that number, 4 games or even 4.5 games back, I think that they stick with what they're doing and they see what they get and see if they can get anything at the trade deadline. I think that if they're further than 5 games back, 6, 7, or whatever can happen over the course of the next 8 days, I think that's when they kind of become sellers. I think if you trade Jock Peterson, there's one team specifically that I'm looking at that I think that they should be getting outfield help, and that is the Milwaukee Brewers. Look, I love the Boston Red Sox. When I went to Fenway the last time, Jackie Bradley Jr. was a starting center fielder for the Red Sox. He's won a Gold Glove. He's an amazing player. That man is batting below 200 right now for the Milwaukee Brewers. They need outfield help. They need a first baseman help. They're good when it comes to pitching. Now, the thing and the scariest thing about this, and especially if you are watching tonight from Nashville, which, by the way, the Jumbo Shrimp and the Sounds, they got rained out tonight down in Jacksonville, so no update on the Sounds. But there are some Sounds pitchers that legitimately could get traded because they could be used as bait to get some offense. And that's where the Brewers are struggling right now. When you talk about this team, good home run wise, they could probably use a power bat, but this team needs somebody that can really make contact because they're one of the worst teams in baseball, specifically in the National League when it comes to batting average. They've got two normal starters right now that are batting below 200, and you cannot have that. And at the trade deadline, when you're looking at somebody like say, for instance, the Jock Peterson, or you can even look at some other outfielders. And yes, I put Chris Bryant into this, and God, if he were to get traded from Chicago to Milwaukee, you want to talk about the Cubs fan base blowing up. But even Chris Bryant, who can play in the outfield, could really help somebody like the Milwaukee Brewers. And that's where one of these options are looking at, because I've kind of been looking around about some players that you could see. The other one that I'm really interested in is going to be Sterling Marte. I'm going to actually be interested to see if the Braves try to. Now, I don't know, and it's not like it's an unwritten rule or anything, will the Marlins be interested in trading in division, which is what they would be doing if they're interested in trading Sterling Marte to the Braves? Look, I think the Braves actually could put together a solid package of some minor leaguers, heck, even Jock Peterson, and put together some players that would make it interesting for the Miami Marlins to make a trade. I don't know if they're going to be willing to trade in division, but trading to the Brewers could potentially be something that you could be seeing from them, because he is too good of a piece, and he was an all-star, which, look, the all-star line, to me, I look at your all MLB teams and all that sort of stuff, but when you're looking at trade deadline, being somebody that is a quote-unquote all-star really, really helps you out when it comes to your trade and what type of player you may be able to get back. Now, Matt says, yes, I've been wanting Sterling Marte in Atlanta for years. Look, I loved him when he was with Arizona. I thought it was extremely odd for him to get traded to Miami, and I think that he would be an amazing outfielder for the Braves. I do not know what his salary situation is right now, and I'm going to look that up as we're going along. But the thing about Sterling Marte is that you are going to have to worry that once he does become a free agent, you're not going to be able to pay him. And he's actually been very smart about this. Now, what's happening with him is Sterling Marte is actually going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. So yes, this would be a rental. You're going to be getting him for about 2 months. It's not going to be one of those scenarios where you could say, hey, look, Sterling, we can put you in center. We can put Acuna in right. We can put, somebody that's not Ozuna in left, and boom, we have got these outfielders. And now that could be interesting to him, but I don't really know. Now we get another comment. I want to say Cap's so sick, and I don't know if that's right, and I apologize. I know you're watching on Twitch, and I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for doing so. And gets the idea of depending on his contract with the Mets, what's the likelihood that DeGrom stays with the Mets for the foreseeable future if they can't contend for a title? Now, if you don't know, and the best way to talk about Jacob DeGrom is, sadly, this is going to be so bad when it comes to it, but DeGrom has got the Bobby Bonilla contract. And if we just celebrated Bobby Bonilla Day 22 days ago, okay? But he has a ton of deferred money. In fact, he's got $52.5 million in deferred money. And that kind of starts going when you're talking about this option of for this team. So now the deferred contract does not start until 2035 for Jacob deGrom. Bobby Bonilla's contract is up on that same day. Okay, so deGrom will become the new Bobby Bonilla. The difference is deGrom's going to be getting paid like $12 million over the course of about 5 seasons. He's not going to be just getting the $1 million like Bobby Bonilla did. Now, with Jacob deGrom, he's got 3 years left in his deal, 22, 23, and 24. He's making over $33 million in this deal. The problem with this is that I think that I'm not going to say a Met for life, but I do think that he's going to stay there for the duration. And I think that is going to be somebody that he's going to be very loyal to New York unless New York starts doing something extremely dumb and they start trading away some players. But right now they have a team that can get them to the playoffs. They're in first place. But I really don't see this as a good baseball team. I've not seen them as a good baseball team the entire season. I just think it's because Phillies have been injured. Braves have been injured, Nationals have been injured, and just nobody's been able to overtake the Mets. Brett hops in and says, Joe Hunk, which team at the top makes the biggest move, sort of like a Cubs for Chapman-like move? So when I'm looking at the players right now that are most likely going to be available, there's going to be one, and There's 2 players that I really, really want to see somebody go for. Now, the one that a lot of people in Major League Baseball is talking about is Max Scherzer. And I don't really see that Max Scherzer with his contract, if he is going to be somebody that's going to get traded away during this trade deadline, because when his deal gets brought up in these conversations, you're going to be wondering, with a man that had a 7-year, $210 million deal, he is going to be a free agent after this year, but he still has about $27 million in this contract for this season. So we're over halfway. So if a team is going to have to pay for that, they're going to have to pay around $12 to $13 million. Max Scherzer is going to be the one that's going to get talked about the most. And you're going to see some teams. God, he's not going to go to Tampa because Tampa would not give up what they need to get Max Scherzer in that deal. The Nationals right now are about 6 games back of it. Now, no, the Dodgers wouldn't do it either because Dodgers do have a good minor league system. I'm still going to say the Padres. If the Padres could trade for Max Scherzer, that could be a very, very deadly deal. And the problem with this is San Diego is in this position when playing with LA, with San Francisco. They have 56 wins right now. Outside of the NL West, they would lead or be tied for both of the other divisions. They would be leading the NL East, and they would be tied with the Brewers in the NL Central. This, to me, again, this is the team that I picked to win the World Series. This team still needs to be playing better on the road. Max Scherzer is a bulldog on the road. I could see that one being the big trade. The other ones, you're going to see somebody go for Kimbrel. And I think that Kimbrel's going to be able to help a bullpen. hint, bullpen. I think that he's going to be able to help a bullpen. The Brewers don't need the pitching. They definitely don't need the bullpen pitching because they have Josh Hader. And that guy's dynamite. The Mets could potentially use somebody like a Kimbrel because they probably need the arm. The Red Sox would be a tremendous destination for Kimbrel. Obviously, he's already played there. I'm not sure if his family still lives there. Tampa Bay, I don't think that they've really blown too many saves so far this season. The White Sox may be another team, but I really could narrow that down. If you're talking about bullpen pitching, the Braves trading for Kimbrel or possibly the Red Sox trading for Kimbrel could be somebody that's going to really significantly improve that bullpen. The other player that is not getting talked about a lot, that was an all-star this year, can mash the ball. This is the player that I really think the Brewers need to be going for, is Joey Gallo. I know I hyped him up so much going into the All-Star Home Run Derby, and he laid an egg. He didn't lay an egg. He just didn't win the first round. And I think that Joey Gallo is going to be a player that if the Brewers are smart, again, if you're a Nashville Sounds fan, I'm sorry. If the Brewers are smart, they trade away some of that pitching that they have at AAA, and then they go get Joey Gallo because he can play outfield, but he can also play first base, both weaknesses for the Brewers, and he mashes. And I mean, he mashes. And that could be somebody that offensively could really shore up this Brewers team. All right, so now we were going through on there. All right, we've got all the comments going on. If you can get some more comments here in the next few seconds, we'll answer those here on the Strike Zone podcast. But don't forget that we'll be back next Thursday. We're here every single Thursday. Next Thursday, we will literally be just one day away from the trade deadline. So I'm assuming we're going to have a ton of trades that we're going to be talking about, speculation or trades that have already been made. Nashville fans, these are probably going to involve Nashville Sounds players because of the fact that the Brewers are one of the best teams in the National League, arguably the best team in the National League outside of the Giants. And if they can get some offense to go with that pitching, which is one of the top 3 pitching staffs in baseball, and I'm talking about bullpen and starting pitching combined, that Brewers team has a really solid potential to at least make the NLCS, potentially make the World Series, but they're going to need some bats. Don't know. Look, Chris Bryant's also played first base. So if they could trade for Gallo, they could trade for Chris Bryant. Again, I know Rangers fans and Cubs fans would hate to watch it, but that is a tandem that putting them with that pitching staff can make this Brewers team deadly in the National League. We'll be back next Thursday. We'll be talking trade deadline. We're going to recap and get you continue to keep up to date with the Olympics. Make sure that you follow me on Twitter at Joe Hunk. Follow 104.5 The Zone across all social media feeds at 104.5 The Zone, including Instagram. And we will talk to you next Thursday night around 9 o'clock.